Well, Happy New Year to you, and welcome, and we welcome in Pat McGuigan, as we do every Saturday morning. Pat, thanks for being with us this morning.
Yeah, we both made it in this morning.
We did. We made it to the new year, and you have some predictions you want to make for 2011.
Yeah, I'm just going to rattle them off real quick,
Okay.
and we can chew on them. We're usually kind of serious. Maybe we'll have a little fun with this one. Number one, the transition. This is real hard stuff, okay? The transition to a new government in Oklahoma will be smooth. Now, that seems unremarkable, unless you compare us to most other countries, and I mean most other countries on the planet. Iraq, Great Britain, a stable democracy where sometimes it takes them months to figure out how to do a transition. So that's number one. Number two, the income tax trigger will stay in effect that we've been discussing, and that'll be a sweetener, especially over time, not a huge cut all at once for the typical taxpayer, but a cut. And then over time, that keeps more money in people's pockets. Number three, in the education system, the new state school superintendent, Janet Barresi, is willing to take on the existing education establishment, and will do so. And she'll have support from Mary Fallin and most of the Republicans. When I say most of the Republicans, I'm expecting some, maybe some of the rural Republicans to have some problems if she presses for administrative, cohesion and consolidation or anything along those lines. Number four, Governor Fallin, when she's governor, will, I believe, in the end, adopt a Reaganesque approach. She'll focus on one or two key things each session. And we've talked about this a little bit before. How much can the legislature do? Maybe they can right-size government this session, and in a way that Mary Fallin defines as right-sizing. We'll see. But I believe she'll focus on 1, 2, 3 issues. Her priorities will pass this first session. She'll use her clout in focused and limited ways. She'll be careful and professional, and in some ways that's simply a reflection of the fact that she's been around a while.
Yeah.
Finally, many Democrats at the Capitol will be very tempted, and I don't know how they'll act on that temptation.
Yeah.
I think they'll be very tempted to be pretty obnoxious.
Be the fly in the ointment?
Yeah, be the fly in the ointment, and they had some pretty good modeling on the other side of the aisle from some Republicans during the years Democrats were still in power. So that's my prediction there. Now, I will say that the Senate leader, Andrew Rice, in particular for the Democrats from here in Oklahoma City, is a very thoughtful guy. He's kind of liberal compared to the rest of the legislature. He is not, however, a loose cannon. He's a thoughtful man. So I may be proven wrong, but I think there'll be some pretty good fights at the Capitol, even if they do lose most votes 2-1.
All right.
So, all right.
Let's go back. Let's dig into your prediction on the income tax rate. And I want to ask you, do you think, there's already been there's a bill on the table from freshman Senator David Holt. He wants to take the income tax even lower over 10 years down to 4.25%. Do you think that has a chance of passing?
I think it has a chance of passing. Not only do I think it has a chance of passing, I think it has a chance that if the economy continues to recover, you might see those increments pressed up. Now, eventually, at some point, even with economic growth, what you're going to bump up again in the absence of some fairly significant right-sizing is there is some revenue loss, even though incremental tax cuts clearly have their own kind of stimulus effect of incentivizing people with income, with money available to invest and so forth. Reagan's tax cuts and JFK's tax cuts in the 60s, JFK, and the 80s, Reagan being good examples of that. But eventually you have questions then of what are your sources of other revenue, and that gets us into the whole issue. This issue may ultimately trigger a very meaningful discussion about the way Oklahoma government is financed and structured, and property tax, for example, where we're fairly low compared to Texas, where they don't have an income tax at all. So watch it as a prelude to those issues. But I think Holt's proposal has a reasonable shot at passing.
Okay. On the issue of education, Janet Barresi, I have no doubt, I think you're right, she'll go in and shake things up there. But I really wonder if you think that they're going to make some headway on consolidation, that issue that has split their urban and rural lawmakers for so many years.
Yeah, I think that the kind of thing that would have a chance and might be able to be understood as a rational incremental step is this administrative consolidation that former Representative Odelia Dank and now her husband David Dank have pressed very carefully, professionally, methodically for now, more than a decade. That avoids the issue of rapid forced consolidation. The real question as we go forward on issues like this, it's similar to the issue of the number of institutions in higher education. There's going to come a point where there is an understanding that there is economies of scale in government, just like there is in the private sector. You can't ignore those in the private sector. Government, in robust times, has the luxury of ignoring economies of scale. I could easily see creation of superintendencies still very well paid in the countryside, where in essence the superintendents become circuit riders, and they keep an eye on the professional and legal and financial requirements of 4 or 5 districts. You still have the same schools, you still have the same number of students. Fallin and Barresi might be, and Hudaki, Phyllis Hudaki, the Secretary of Education, they might wind up being more aggressive and robust than that. But that would certainly be a first start as a way to capture millions of dollars that could then be made available to stay in classroom instruction and athletic programs and all the other things that people care about in our towns. All right.
All right. Well, we'll see about that. We're out of time, but you can read more about these other topics on Pat's blog, CapitolBeatOK.com, and we'll check on these predictions a year from now.
Okay, that's a deal. That's good.
Thanks, Pat, and you have a great day. Happy New Year.